is an Unspoiled Network podcast. This is Unspoiled, covering Harry Potter, the Rereading, Prisoner of Azkaban, chapters 18 and 19, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, and, wait for it, hold on, the Servant of Lord Voldemort. In these chapters, RoShawn and I try to get back into the swing of things after coming back from our trip, and, oh right, that rat is Peter Pettigrew. Gross. Welcome to Unspoiled.
He's so gross.
Super gross!
He's so gross. Like, I thought that I could banish the image from the movies out of my head to read these chapters, but I couldn't. It's so disgusting. And all I can see is him and his fucking buck teeth and his little, like, dirty face and his gross nails.
And they give him, like, almost like these pustules or something on his face.
Yes, like he's got the plague.
Yeah.
It's his evil. That's what it is. It's his evil and his subterfuge coming through on his face.
Yeah, maybe he got jinxed with something like the curse that... What's her name? Mariette?
Right. The boils on her face. The snake.
Yeah. Which I know is a divisive subject.
That's right, it is, isn't it?
But
I feel like I felt firmly in the camp of she deserved that shit.
You did, yes.
I did, right?
And I'm pretty sure I was right there with you.
Mm-hmm.
I had very little sympathy. That's probably not kind. But, you know, that's not really what I'm known for, is it? So
whoever said we were kind?
My mom... a couple years ago, like, I was talking about how I had corrected somebody on something, and my mom was like, sometimes being kind is more important than being right. And I was like, no, it's not.
Have you met me?
Oh, Mom, I appreciate you trying to set a good example for me, but it's too late. I'm 30 years old. Anyway, welcome, everybody. I'm Natasha.
I'm RoShawn.
And this first chapter, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, I had forgot that our little gang fucking stunned Snape. Did you forget that?
I did, yeah.
I completely forgot about that. Because when he shows up as early as he does, before Harry has gotten the whole story, I was really confused.
Right.
And then when they all take him out again, I was like, oh, right, shit. Because I couldn't figure out when Harry got the rest of the story, if they were about to be escorted back at that moment.
Right. And we were just talking off air about how watching the movies has fucked us up a little bit with how the story goes. And the way it plays in the movie is so different from how it plays in the book.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's, I actually wanted to read a section of there was somebody's email and I'm trying to find it now because we had been talking about the comment that Snape makes about, don't you think that he maybe got it directly from the manufacturers? Mm-hmm. And we were trying to theorize on whether or not he actually knew the Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs nicknames when he makes that very pointed comment.
Right.
And somebody sent me, a couple people, to be honest, sent me emails, like, or messages with their theories. Here it is. Greg Lynn sent me this. And he says, I was just listening to the most recent episode of the Reread, and y'all were talking about the scene where Snape finds Harry with the map and calls on Lupin. I think the Git, who is Snape, I think the Git is absolutely accusing Lupin of giving the map to Harry, and I think the Git knows the nicknames as well. If you look in Snape's worst memory chapter, chapter 28 of Order of the Phoenix, you can see Sirius refer to Lupin as Moony as they're leaving the entrance hall. In fact, they talk about a question on werewolves, and James and Sirius are needling Lupin about getting it right. In the same snippet, James uses the name Wormtail, and right before the bullying scene, James uses the name Padfoot. This is Snape's memory, so he hears them use those names, and since it's his worst memory, he's not about to forget a single thing about that day. Snape being the git he is, he probably blames the Marauders for the actions he took that drove Lily away and made it his worst memory. So basically, yes, Snape knew about the nicknames and was absolutely accusing Lupin of giving Harry the map, and Lupin not acknowledging it was him daring Snape to reveal the werewolf thing.
How about that?
Right?
I also, extra points for just calling Snape the git.
The whole time.
That's amazing.
The subject line of the email was the Marauders, the map, and the Git.
Oh my God.
Such a great chapter name. Like, I really want that to be one of the chapter names.
That's amazing. I was like, okay. Part of me was afraid that after the whole wand situation at Universal, and you guys have already listened to the recap of the trip, so you know I got Snape's wand. I thought that maybe I would be a little bit more sympathetic to Snape or aligned with him in some way.
Okay.
But the way I enjoyed him being called the Git clearly demonstrates that I am not aligned with him at all.
It is so amazing to me that you picked his wand. Oh my God, how funny is that?
So yeah, I'm still firmly in the fuck Snape camp. Even though I have his wand, and his wand is beautiful, it doesn't make me like him anymore.
That is good. I think we're all happy to hear it. So yeah, thank you, Greg, for that email, and for that delightful subject line. Okay, so this chapter starts off with them struggling to get Scabbers away from Ron. And this scene, this is one of those things that, like, I know this is not going to be a popular opinion, but this whole scene in the Shrieking Shack has always rubbed me the wrong way. Because
Really?
It's one of those moments where I just feel like any number of simple statements could have cleared this whole mess up immediately. And I hate scenes like that.
There is a lot of what me and my husband have like this running joke, and it's not particularly, it's not unique, but it's something we think is funny. And we call it like the Three's Company thing.
Yes.
Where it's like, you know, I overheard you say something from the other room, but I heard one word wrong, and now there's a hijinks, and you know, and like they could easily be solved if you just said the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Just say the thing and clear all of these misconceptions up. And this goes on for these whole 2 chapters. And it's kind of frustrating.
It's like, it starts off immediately that way with Sirius being like, I won't deny that I killed them.
Right.
Which, hey, maybe don't start it that way if you want them to listen to anything you have to say.
Yeah.
And then goes on with him continuing like that sort of like double speak.
Yes.
Which obviously Harry brings up, like he said he killed them.
Mm-hmm.
And no, that's not what he said. Exactly. But you could be forgiven for thinking that's what he said because he basically agreed with you when you accused him of murder. Right. So that's not your fault. Yeah. And then
there's a lot of, well, just let me finish. Well,
right.
Just fucking go ahead and finish then.
Well, or just say it properly in the first sentence instead of doing this weird equivocating thing.
Yeah.
Where you're like, well, how about you just say, I didn't murder them, but I may as well have.
Right.
You could have said that, but no. And I know that it's to draw this whole thing out, but I don't like that it draws this whole thing out.
Agreed.
Is the point, really. And then the fact that what it comes down to in the end is Lupin says to Ron, I'm going to force him to reveal himself, and if he really is just a rat, it won't hurt him. Well, hey, you could have said that 10 minutes ago, too.
You could have just opened with that.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt him. If he's really a rat, then it'll be fine.
Right.
Because they keep making it seem like they're just going to kill his fucking rat, which that's a pretty shitty thing to do to somebody's pet, guys. So maybe point out that you can do a spell to prove your point and not. So this is something that I think is part of why the third movie also isn't my favorite, as it is with so many people, is I didn't feel like the scene was done well in the third movie anyway. And I don't like the scene in the first place. So to watch it get played out the way that it is on the page is even more frustrating than it is to read.
Agreed. When this happens, and if we, like, as readers, if we take a moment to step back from the scene that's being set, and we think about it sort of, fairly or logically, you have Lupin, who's a grown-up, a teacher. We have Sirius, who is an adult, but he's compromised from all his years in Azkaban, right? And then you have the kids. You have Harry, Ron, and Hermione there, and then you have Scabbers. The adults in the room do such a poor job.
Such a poor job.
Of trying to explain what's happening, what we know has already happened, and what we think is going on. They do such a terrible job of managing in this situation that is incredibly frustrating to me as a reader. On the second read. Now, on the first read, I think I might have, because I didn't know what the fuck was going on the first time.
So you kind of like get carried by the same confusion that the characters are feeling.
Exactly. And so that's where I get torn, because I'm like, okay, as a storyteller, she knew what she was doing, because you're going to identify with the people in the story who don't know what's up, like Ron, or Harry. The people who are waiting for explanation. But that only works for the first time. Any other reading of these two chapters, if you're not pulling your hair out, I don't know what to say to you.
Yeah, I think, like, I think if you're somebody who is willing to forgive a lot, then this might be okay. But this in particular, this style of miscommunication and misunderstanding is such a personal pet peeve.
Right.
Already. And then the fact that this has lasted about 3 chapters by the end of this one.
Yep.
It's just too much for me. It's, it's annoying anyway, but it just feels like it goes on forever. And everybody the whole time is on the brink of murdering each other.
Yes. The stakes are super high.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember, there's a line where, I guess this Lupin is talking about the names, and someone is like, what is prongs? And then they get cut off. I think Hermione cuts them off.
Harry just says, what sort of creature or what sort of animal did my father? And Hermione interrupts and is like, but he couldn't be an animagus. You know that. Right.
So I was trying to remember how our prongs thing happened. For this,
what prongs thing? What? What do you mean? I don't know. What do you mean?
So I'm imagining that you stopped me and asked me, what do I think? That has to be how it happened, right?
I think probably.
And then I just was terrible. That's the next thing that happened, right?
Oh my God, it was so funny. Like, and I get on your case about it, but like when I stop and try and think what I would have thought, I don't really have a good, it's hard to erase something that from your mind. So, did you just sneeze?
It was like a half cough.
It was like a sneeze laugh.
All right. So I don't have to rebuild the whole thing because you guys were there. But for the life of me, I could not think of anything that would make sense for prongs. And now that I know what the truth is, I feel some kind of way about you letting me go on and on about crustaceans.
It was just such an unexpected, like, it was almost more that I didn't even know how to react because I was not, like, that hadn't even entered my mind.
Well, because you're a sane person.
But more than that, just like, you know how that is when somebody says something that is so far outside of, it's just so far out that you're just like, oh, I don't even, wait, hold on, wait.
I cannot even put myself back in that place to how I got to where I got to. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, what is wrong with me?
Oh my God.
And it's funny because after it happened, right? And it was I was so clearly wrong. I had built up this idea of that I just got bad cues, you know? Like, I got tricked. But no, I didn't get tricked at all. That was no one's fault but mine. There was no one's fault but mine. Yeah. And because there's not a lot in this chapter to lend itself to guessing, you know, what prongs might be.
Right.
You know, it's a really quick moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm almost thinking is why it didn't occur to me is that it is such a quick moment that maybe I just didn't even let myself stop to wonder about it. Maybe you got point blank asked a question, what do you think? And when you're reading to yourself, that's not how it works. So maybe that's really all it is that I didn't think that because I never stopped to wonder about it.
I think
because I knew
true.
I just needed to read fast and find out.
If you hadn't stopped me, like if we weren't doing it this way, then I could have just read a chapter or two and I would have been fine. You know, it was just the fact that someone stopped me and said, well, what do you think this means? And then I was clearly crazy. So, yeah.
And mentioning, because you were talking, you know, or like just a couple minutes ago saying that, it is like there's, you know, the adult there that's Lupin, except that there's also Sirius, but like that doesn't count in a way. And I'm trying to find, somebody tweeted at me, and maybe it was on my other account. Here it is. Yeah, it was to my Natasha Writing account. I was looking under my Unspoiled account and I couldn't find it. Sassy Ginger on Twitter said, love your HP podcast so much. Quick point about Sirius. You find it difficult to relate to his immaturity, but I always saw it as him being frozen in time at age 20 when he was imprisoned in Azkaban.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so that, I think, I have mixed feelings about it because I think that she's right about that and that he is immature and impetuous and whatnot because he probably is frozen in time. But then I remember him being really shitty to Creature and sending Snape on a little wild werewolf chase that would have ended in him dying.
Right.
And I'm like, so yeah, he was suspended in time probably, and isn't it awful that he got sent to fucking Azkaban? But also, like, he was gonna kill a guy as a joke.
Yeah.
And
well, Sirius is kind of shitty.
Yeah, he is.
That before we talked about that in the first read. Sirius is not, in my opinion, a sympathetic character.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to understand when people are like, I totally cried when Sirius died. And I'm like,
He is kind of the worst, and his only redeeming characteristic is his friendship with Lupin and James, which is great and, you know, whatever. But he's kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah, a little bit.
And it's not his fault. He comes from a family that's shit. You know, he is less shit than his family pedigree would suggest. And I feel like because he's not as shitty as he should be, we give him all the passes.
Yeah, maybe our bar is just like so low.
Yeah, imagine that. What could that be like?
Oh my God. I'm just thinking about like if he came from a family of like, you know, alt-writers and then he was like this liberal.
Right? We would be giving him all the accolades.
But like he was like kind of a terrible person, but he was so proud of himself for not being as terrible as his like outright Nazi family that it was
That's pretty much what it is, isn't it?
Oh man.
I mean,
it reframes everything.
Yeah, it does. It kind of does.
Oh no.
Like, this got dark.
He's one of those guys who like puts how feminist he is in his Tinder profile.
He's Joss Whedon.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh my God. There was some meme going around about guys who are like, guys who try and use like, don't body shame or sex shame, send me nudes kind of thing. Guys are trying to frame their horn doggedness behind this weird veneer of like sex positive feministiness. And it's just such garbage.
A friend of mine is saying he's asking people to like make him badges so he can give out. He's like, oh, you didn't rape anybody? Here's a badge for you because you so desperately need it. I'm like, oh, hot take.
Like it. I like it. So, all right. Sorry, I got sidetracked by thinking about fucking Sirius as Joss Whedon. I kind of love it. So they're in the middle of explaining to Harry about this awful joke that Sirius was going to... And the thing is, not only did Sirius do this, but when Lupin brings this up, all he says is, it served him right.
Yeah, he doesn't feel bad about it at all.
Sneaking around, trying to find out what we were up to, hoping he could get us expelled.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you almost killed the guy.
You kind of deserve to almost be expelled.
Mm-hmm.
Like for real, between me and you kind of deserve that shit.
Yeah.
But you still think that you're somehow the victim in this scenario.
Yep.
Like you're the wrong party. Yeah, Sirius ain't shit.
Yeah, no, he's not.
He's not. And I remember first read, and I was really excited about the idea of Harry having family, and I wanted him to have a happy ending because I thought that was still possible. Because I didn't know what I was doing. But Sirius is trash. I'm saying it. It's done. It's out there. I said it.
Oh shit.
Sirius is trash. Come at me, bro. No, really don't. Don't come at me.
You know they will, though. You know what? That's fucked up because they're not going to come at you. They're going to come at me.
Yeah, come at you.
And I'm going to have to be the fucking buffer. I can just hear a bunch of people firing up their Gmail right now. And it'll be sandwiched within, love your show, totally wrong about this, love it, great job, thanks. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, Sirius isn't regretful about what he did. He doesn't seem to see anything wrong with it.
Nope.
He is still trash to Creature. And all they have to do is like ask Creature what happened to Regulus. Like, that's all it took was just asking them. And Sirius doesn't know what happened to his own brother, right?
Right.
Which is a pretty fucked up thing. That this dude right here, who's you just treat like shit all the time, has the answer. And oh, guess what? It turns out your brother took as much of a stand as you did in the end, but you don't even know that. So you keep patting yourself on the back for being the one person in your family when you're not. It's just that you never bothered to figure it out.
You're not even the one in your family. You are so high on your own supply that you think you're like the one, and you're not even.
Nope.
All right.
So it should come as no surprise that after Snape immediately is like, well, it serves him right, or after Sirius says that when Snape reveals himself, he is not in any mood to listen to anything that Sirius has to say.
Yeah. Well, because he's working on his own shit.
Right?
He's got some other shit that he needs to figure out.
And you have to wonder how differently this scene would have gone if Sirius had said something like, at all contrite in that moment.
Anything that showed that he recognized
the gravity.
Yeah, something.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Also, I love this illustration, too, of Snape on this page, this next page.
Oh, yeah, with the warp spell starting.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah, like, the only thing that drives me nuts about Snape's moment there is that Lupin, like, finishes by saying that he didn't know what it was that Sirius had done, and Harry says, so that's why Snape doesn't like you, because he thought you were in on the joke. That's right, sneered a cold voice from the wall behind Lupin, and Snape is there, but he's still just as pissed at Lupin, even though he found out that Lupin didn't know.
Right.
So that's the one thing that I'm like, all right, Snape, listen, you can still be mad at Sirius, and that's completely fine. He totally deserves it. But Lupin, clearly, you've been mistaken this whole time.
And that's the thing that we do, I think, and I'm being cavalier with the we. I'm just going to throw us all under the bus. But when we feel like we've been wronged by someone, and we don't necessarily want to give them a pass.
Yeah.
You know, even though intellectually we might understand that, okay, in this moment that person didn't mean to hurt us specifically. But in the moment of sort of like what do you call it? Like being vindicated, we're just like, ha 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 to all of you. You know? And
did you just gesticulate wildly when you said ah ha ha? Because something sounded on your mic, like your arm just waved around.
I absolutely did.
Oh God. And yeah, Snape, like the whole time, he actually says vengeance is very sweet. And he's, part of what he had been accusing Lupin of to Dumbledore was correct.
Yep.
Because he told Dumbledore that maybe he couldn't trust Lupin because Lupin and Black used to be friends.
Yep.
And it turns out Lupin was secretly aware of a way Black could be getting in and didn't tell Dumbledore about it. So Snape is right. And it's just kind of like, all your faves are problematic. Basically, everybody sucks. Everybody's done something terrible and stupid here, is really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
That's the thing I love, too, so much about these books now, especially on the reread, is that you can, like, we watch these people, these characters, and we get to see what they were like as kids, as teenagers, in these sort of flashbacks kind of thing. And when you are a teenager and you're suffering under all the rules that come with being a teenager and who's popular and who's not and all that other kind of stuff, that shit impacts you as an adult. Even though they will lie to you and tell you it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you, oh, you'll grow up and it won't matter anymore. But it does. It always matters. And we see people like Snape having this, like, joy, almost,
Yeah.
This, like, visceral kind of comeuppance, like, I finally got you. I knew you've been shit, and now everyone's going to know you're shit. Because that's what it's like when you suffer as a kid, and these people bully you or whatever the deal is. Years can go by, and then finally you're in a position to be like, look, I told you these people were terrible. And no one wanted to believe me, but I always knew they were terrible.
Right. Yeah.
And look, here they are being terrible. And Snape is terrible. But Snape is also like being like, look, I said this. I tried to tell y'all. Look.
Yep.
And you want to kind of be like, oh, he's being petty, but it's not petty. I feel like a very natural, it's a very natural progression. You know? It feels really true to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, when you're saying it's not petty, it's like, it is and it isn't. It isn't in that he was completely 100% fucking right about Lupin, and Dumbledore should have maybe kept his mind open a little bit more on that. But it isn't, but it is also in that he's still super angry at Lupin, even though he just heard that Lupin had nothing to do with it.
Right.
So, yeah, it's like it's just such a human thing that we let our petty grievances fuel a very understandable and perhaps righteous fury.
Yes, agreed.
In a way that's just not helpful to anyone.
Yeah.
Least of all ourselves.
But it sure feels good, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like that moment where Snape puts Snape pointed his wand straight between Black's eyes. "Give me a reason," he whispered. "Give me a reason to do it, and I swear I will." Like, that's fucking serious.
Yeah.
Get it? But no, honestly. Getting to, like, hold this dude basically at gunpoint after all this time? How fucking amazing must that feel when he nearly killed you and just expressed that he does not feel bad about it?
I imagine it's gotta be like years and years have been leading up to this. Mm-hmm. Which is why he looks so fucking gleeful.
Yeah, exactly. And he basically informs Sirius that he's not planning on taking him to the castle. He's just going to go and get a Dementor. And that changes Sirius's whole attitude right around.
Yeah, well.
Because he thinks that he's still going to be able to, like, get somebody to listen to him. And now he's realizing that he might just be a shell of a vegetable person by the time anyone finds him. And he won't be able to say a damn thing ever again. So this is the moment where Harry loses it and screams, "You're pathetic," at Snape, which I had completely forgotten about. It's written in all caps. "You're pathetic," Harry yelled. "Just because they made a fool of you at school, you won't even listen." And then Snape loses it, and Harry loses it more, and then it ends with everybody stunning Snape at once, and he gets knocked out cold. Which is hilarious.
I do love that.
We attacked a teacher! We attacked a teacher! Hermione whimpered. "Oh, we're gonna be in so much trouble!" I just love that so much. So finally, we find out about how Sirius realized that it was Scabbers, which is the newspaper that we actually heard Fudge mention when Harry was under the invisibility cloak.
Yep.
And there is a picture of the Weasleys on the front page with the little rat perched on his shoulder and that rat missing a toe. And there are plenty of rats out there, but Black's, he knew what Peter looked like specifically from having watched him transform a million times, which I believe. And then Lupin realizes that that's how he faked his death, was by cutting his own finger off. Because Lupin gets part of it, but he doesn't understand the whole thing. Yeah. So he has to be like, "Okay, help me out here, buddy, because how did that happen?"
I do like the way that they tell us the story, because it's like Lupin is talking for the most part of this. And Sirius is kind of in the background being like, hurry up, because I'm so angry and I can't take another moment of this.
Yes.
But
it's like he has to pee really bad.
It does seem like that. Right? But finally we get the whole story out, and it becomes clear that this was something that they could have figured out if they had just stopped to think about it.
Right.
But just no one ever needed to stop and think about it.
Yep.
Which adds the whole kind of like, what a bummer it is.
Right? Yeah, I think that is the beautiful part of this whole story setup. Is just that everything looks like it's explained so completely on the surface that it is really understandable why nobody pressed any further on anything.
Yeah.
Because why would you ever think?
Yeah. And I have to say, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, agreed.
As far as the story goes. Even though I get frustrated, at the end of the day, it still feels to me like, well, this makes sense.
Right. Yeah, agreed. Like, it's not the story itself that I really have a problem with at all. Like, that's the part I think that holds up. It's just the way that we find out.
Right.
That's what I kind of was like, oh, I guess.
Yeah, and that becomes sort of a shortcoming on the character's part, Not so much on the storyteller part.
That's true.
It's her, but just our individual characters that we know. We're kind of like, oh, I wish you had fucking got that.
What do you think of this illustration of Pettigrew?
I like it better than the movies.
Yeah, it's hard not to.
Because it's not nearly as upsetting.
He's like...
It's interesting because... how upsetting he is in the movies. I really cannot.
Yeah, he is much more repulsive in the movies, but in this picture, I feel like this painting in the illustrated version, which the link is in the show notes if you'd like to purchase it through my link and help me out a little bit there, guys. What's up?
It's gorgeous.
He looks much more rat-like than I think he does in the movie.
He looks much more rat-like without being gross.
Because rats aren't necessarily gross.
No. What they do for him in the movies, again, with like the weird pox on his face and like makes him look like he has something that's contagious and like he's got like a fucking blister on his lip in the movie for some reason. It's just gross. This looks much more like someone who would want to be small.
Oh, okay, yeah. I see that.
Someone who would want to be something they could hide because they don't feel good about themselves or not sure of themselves. So this illustration to me makes sense. Like, oh, this guy would want to be a rat. Not because rats are gross or bad or any of that shit, but because it's something that's small that could go under the radar.
Right.
The movie does this thing where it's like he wants to be a rat because he's evil. And let me show you how gross that is. Which is just a different tone.
It's just like the way that you said that made me think of like that he like learned how to become an animagi and was like, let me show you how gross this is. And it turns into a rat.
That's what it feels like though.
So finally he gets to try and spin his lies again. And you really get to see Lupin and how fucking even-handed Lupin is, even during this horrific moment. This man knows how to keep his shit calm.
He really does.
It's a little unnerving, almost. And he just says, where is it? Oh, here it is. You don't believe this madness, Remus. I must admit, Peter, I have difficulty in understanding why an innocent man would want to spend 12 years as a rat, said Lupin evenly. Fair point. And we find out that this is kind of fucked up, but Sirius suggested that they make Peter the secret keeper because Peter was such a pathetic waste that nobody would have expected it.
Yeah. Which,
basically.
I believe I said earlier that Sirius wasn't shit, so...
What do you know? Louder for the people in the back!
Yeah, I'm just saying.
And I love that, when Sirius is like, it probably was the finest moment of your miserable life telling Voldemort you could hand him the Potters. He says, well, Scabbers, I mean, this man, he's been sleeping in Harry's, or no, sorry, this is Hermione. He's been sleeping in Harry's dormitory for 3 years. If he's working for you-know-who, how come he never tried to hurt Harry before now? I'll tell you why, said Black. Because you never did, and he's speaking to Peter at this point, you never did anything for anyone unless you could see what was in it for you. Voldemort's been in hiding for 12 years. They say he's half dead. You weren't about to commit murder right under Albus Dumbledore's nose for a wreck of a wizard who's lost all his power, were you? You'd want to be quite sure he was the biggest bully on the playground before you went back to him. Why else did you find a wizard family to take you in? Keeping an ear out for news, weren't you, Peter? Just in case your old protector regained strength and it was safe to rejoin him. That's pretty solid.
Yep.
That's pretty solid. Because that's a good point just as from a writing standpoint, for J.K. Rowling to explain why he wouldn't have just run as far fucking away as possible to be safe. He wants to be safe, but he can manage that while also hedging his bets, basically. So I really like that detail a lot.
And it really fits into what they tell us about Peter.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was... I was surprised when we first read the books about this reveal about Peter Pettigrew and being alive and all that kind of stuff and being Scabbers and everything else. But once I read about what he was supposed to be like, it made sense to me.
Okay, gotcha.
But then when I watched the movies, I was like, oh, they didn't do a very good job of that.
Yeah, no, they really didn't.
And it's kind of a bummer because it's a really interesting sort of balance they try to find, you know, with this guy who, like, if you think about Peter being friends with James and Sirius and Lupin, you know, we know that he was always kind of on the outskirts. You know, he was never 100% in the crew.
Right.
You know, he was just barely tolerated. It's what it seems like to me.
It does sort of sound... It's hard to really know, but yeah.
But that's kind of the feeling of it. So it makes sense that he would be the one that would crack.
I really wish... And I know a lot of people have expressed the desire for a Marauders book, like a follow-up book that would flash back and give us some looks
is that
into...
right?
Yeah, a lot of people were kind of hopeful that... when they heard, I think, that there was a screenplay being written, that it was going to be something like that, and then it turned out to be The Cursed Child, which was a whole other thing. But I would have liked some more details on exactly how they became friends, because with Harry and Ron and Hermione, Harry and Ron hit it off right away, and then Hermione becomes their friend because of the troll. And you gotta think something like that must have happened with Peter.
Yeah. Well, it's a funny thing, like, in my experience, as someone who was friends with people who you would be like, oh, how'd they end up being friends?
That's true.
I have been what I think of as the weakest link. Like, you know, God, why are they friends with her?
You would think that, you dummy.
Well, it's... But I feel like...
Let me build your confidence by calling you an idiot.
Yeah, that works. That was super helpful. But I feel like the thing with Peter is, like, whatever it was that made them accept him as a friend never made him feel comfortable or confident or safe. Right?
True. Yeah.
Which makes him the perfect patsy. It makes him like the weakest link. It makes him the one that Voldemort or whoever is going to go after. But you're right. I would love to find out what that relationship was like.
Yeah.
Because even hearing Sirius talk about him and Lupin talk about him, it doesn't sound like they care that much about him. Like,
No.
they don't hold him in very high esteem at all.
Yeah, I'm like trying to think, because if I guess what we're meant to think is just that Remus was so convinced of his guilt by the time that this whole thing is revealed that there's no reason for him to have a moment of like, oh my God, my friend is still alive. Right. I thought you'd been murdered. Because right. By then it's pretty much like, yeah, this doesn't look right. So there's not really a good reason. Like, that makes sense. And fucking Sirius, one would think, probably picked on Peter anyway.
I imagine it has to be true.
So yeah. And we've said this before, like we talked about this at the end of the last book, was that we wish that there had been more given to us as a reason to like James. Mm-hmm. Also, because all we see of James is him being a shitbird. Yeah. And then other people telling us, no, he was a great guy though.
Yeah, but always...
And we just have to like believe that.
Exactly. Which is sort of a bit of a bummer in a shortcoming of the books, because she never does a good job of convincing me that James isn't terrible.
And, like, not just that he isn't terrible, but, like, what the hell happened to make Lily want him in the end?
Exactly. Just sort of, she leaves it very much up to, like, one day Lily was looking at him and the skies parted and music played, and she was like, oh, but he's great.
Right.
And sometimes it happens like that. You know?
It's almost like we're supposed to think that Snape was so, like, had become such a bigot that she went for the person who was his polar opposite.
Right.
But, like, we see her despise James. So that, we know that isn't actually, like, how she was and what her thought process would have been.
It would have been nice to see a moment of Lily seeing something in James that explains to us how she changed. You know, what made her think of him differently. But again, there's a lot of James is like, we're just supposed to take on faith.
Yeah, and like most of what we see of James is through the pensieve with Sirius's memories, or through the occlumency lesson where it goes wrong. So it makes sense that there's no good memory of James in Sirius's, or in Snape's
mind. Yeah, agreed. So there's this idea that we're just supposed to trust that because Lily ended up falling in love with him, that means he was worth falling in love with.
Yeah.
Like, we just have to take it. But they don't show us anything about James that I think is particularly redeemable. They really don't.
No. I think that what it's really supposed to be is not just take it on faith because of, like, J.K. Rowling, but also take it on faith that we've seen enough, at least, of Harry's mother to know that she has a good solid head on her shoulders and doesn't have patience for fools and assholes. And so if she finally decided to accept him, then something must have changed.
It must be okay. So,
yeah. Anyway, so let's see. So you see, I had to do something. I was the only one who knew Peter was still alive. It was as if someone had lit a fire in my head, and the Dementors couldn't destroy it. It wasn't a happy feeling, it was an obsession. But it gave me strength, and it cleared my mind. So one night, when they opened my door to bring food, I slipped past them as a dog. It's so much harder for them to sense animal emotions that they were confused. I was thin, very thin enough to slip through the bars. I swam as a dog back to the mainland. I journeyed north and slipped into the Hogwarts grounds as a dog. I've been living in the forest ever since, except when I come to watch the Quidditch, of course. You fly as well as your father did, Harry. And Harry nods, and Pettigrew knows in that moment that, like, oh, I am fucked.
Yeah.
And, let's see. Oh, and that's right. I like this too. Sirius didn't tell Remus that he had changed the plan because all he knew was that there was a spy, but he didn't know who. And he chose Peter because he didn't think Peter was the spy and didn't tell Remus about the switch because he thought Remus was the spy.
Yeah.
So that's why there was no sharing of that, which is a bummer, but makes total sense. And I love the moment where Peter tries to appeal to Ron for like, and Ron pulls away from him, and it's so like, I let you sleep in my bed. Haven't I been a good friend, a good pet? You wouldn't let them kill me, Ron, will you? You're on my side, aren't you? Kind master, kind boy, I was your rat. I was a good pet. Oh, Jesus.
Nobody is on your side, sir.
If you made a better rat than human, it's not much to boast about, Peter, said Black. And then he tries to go to Hermione, who's just disgusted.
Yeah, I'm disgusted at this point as well.
Right? And then he tries to go to Harry and say, you look just like your father. And Sirius loses his mind.
I don't know why he thought that was a good thing to say.
Right!
It's like
I guess you'll just say whatever. When you're, like, about to be murdered, you're just like, let me throw some wild, hopeful, poorly judged sentences out there. So Lupin and Black decide that they're going to kill him together. And they come out at him, and Pettigrew starts crying, finally. And he says, what could I have done, the Dark Lord? I was scared. I was never brave like you and Remus and James. He who must not be named forced me. And Black is just like, you fucking liar.
Yeah.
You've been passing information to him for a year before Lily and James died. And Pettigrew's response is, what was there to be gained by refusing him? Mm-hmm. Which is a hell of a sentence, boy.
Yeah. We could talk about
I don't feel like I appreciated that enough the first read through of this with you.
Yeah. I mean, because that's it, though, right? Like, what was there to be gained by refusing him?
And Black, what was there to be gained by fighting the most evil wizard who had ever existed?
Well, when you frame it that way.
Only innocent lives, Peter. You don't understand, whined Pettigrew. He would have killed me, Sirius. Then you should have died, roared Black. Died rather than betray your friends as we would have done for you. Which I'm like, well...
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, but I love that framing of it. The what was there to be gained by refusing him.
Yep.
Because often we think, well, what are you getting out of it by joining in? Right? That's the way we think of it.
Yeah.
But the question really is, not so much what am I gaining by joining in, but what am I getting by not, like, going against it?
Right. And I mean that really, he's basically proving Sirius's earlier point about how you would never come out and hurt Harry if there wasn't something in it for you. Because he's right here saying, well, what was in it for me to not do this? So he's completely affirming everything Sirius said about him.
Which makes me mad because Sirius ends up being, like, totally right in this moment. You know, but he's so frustrating that you don't want him to be right.
Isn't that such a thing?
It is a thing. It's a thing that happens.
I love this. I love it. Because it really is a thing that happens. Shitty, terrible people can be right.
Yep.
They can be right sometimes. And they can be on your side technically, but you're still like, nah.
You're still like, fuck that guy, though.
I don't want you on my side, though. So then they they said you should have realized if Voldemort didn't kill you, we would. Goodbye, Peter. And this is when Harry steps in and says, my father wouldn't want you to be murderers.
Right. Which I don't know about all that.
You know.
Maybe he would, though.
This is, and I was thinking about this today, because the last episode of Dresden Files, you mentioned, because we're doing death masks right now, we just started it, and you mentioned that, well, this seems like kind of a Bible-y book.
Yeah, I did say that.
And that maybe Michael Carpenter might show up again because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking about Michael Carpenter as a character today and realizing how pure his thought processes are about things is so foreign to me that I would straight up not even be able to come up with some of the way he reacts to things or the recommended course of action that he suggests. Right. Because he is so good-hearted and so, like, such a rule follower in a way, like a moral code follower. And I am very much a gray area person, and that is generous. And so there are things that he chooses to do or ways that he takes something that to me is a totally reasonable thing, and he is affronted by it. And as a writer, that kind of stuff, I don't think I could come up with. Like, I'd have to go and talk to people and be like, so what's your interpretation of this? Like, I was telling you about in one of my characters in the book that I'm writing, she lights a rapist on fire. And a woman that I work with on the broadcast, I was telling her about the scene, and her response to that was, wow, so you've really shut the door on her ever being a good guy, huh?
Yeah, which is not something that occurred to you at all, I'm imagining.
Never even, like, I was sitting there with like my mouth hanging open.
You
like,
thought
what?
that made that person a good guy.
Not even that it made her a good guy, just that didn't make her a bad guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just that it was like, well, they were trying to rape someone. What do you want her to do? Maybe not light them on fire. Well, I guess if you want to be all fucking... But, yeah, so, like, this moment where Harry's like, he wouldn't want you to be murderers for him. I'm like, they wouldn't be murderers. That's how my mind works. Is that this isn't murder. But there's no good reason why it's not murder. It is.
It's just that you don't think of it that way.
I don't think of it that way because to me this is justice, and those two things don't occupy the same plane.
Right.
And yet, if you asked me about how I feel about capital punishment, I would be real waffly on that. But that's different because the state can't be trusted.
That's fair.
So, in this moment, we know what happened with these guys. And the people who are wielding the power to kill him were directly affected and close friends, and that's a very different situation. But yeah, so Harry's reaction to this, like, completely threw me when I read it the first time. I was like, you're gonna what? Really? And he's trying to be like, well, you know, we'll take him back to the castle. And in reality, that's a very level-headed approach. But as a reader, you just know that that's not how it's going to be. Because the way books like this go, nothing goes to plan. So as soon as he's like, we'll take him to the castle, I'm like, no. And it's pretty striking that Peter makes it until the last book.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that on the second read. I'm like, this motherfucker really hung in there.
Yeah.
Considering.
So they go and get Snape, and they have to levitate him. And let's see, what do they tie up Peter? Oh no, yeah. Thin cord shot from Lupin's wand, and next moment Pettigrew was wriggling on the floor, bound and gagged. But if you transform Peter, growled Black, we will kill you. You agree, Harry? And Harry nods, specifically so that Pettigrew can see him nod, so that he knows. So they wind up having to levitate both Peter and Snape, I guess. And let's see. Oh, no, here it is. Black conjured heavy manacles from thin air. Soon Pettigrew was upright again. Left arm chained to Lupin's right. Right arm chained to Ron's left. Ron's face was set. He seemed to have taken Scabbers' true identity as a personal insult. I love that detail.
Yeah, Ron is mad now.
This shit got personal. Crookshanks leapt lightly off the bed and led the way out of the room, his bottle-brush tail held jauntily high. And that is the end of that chapter. And how beautiful is the Dementor's kiss-facing page?
It's really pretty.
Oh my god, I love it so much. That color scheme is my jam. Purple, black, and gold? Yes, please. So I think that's, like, there are 3 chapters left. Let me see. That's 20, 21... 22. Yep. So the next episode is going to be the final one on the book. And then we agreed to do a wrap-up episode before we break for Westworld.
Well, all right.
So yeah, 2 more episodes. Then we'll do Westworld. And then when we return, as you all know by now, the rest of the show, the reread, is going to be patrons only. So you've got a couple weeks. You've basically got until the new year to become patrons. Time. I think that's plenty of time. And it's $1 and up. So all you have to pledge is $1 a month, which I think is eminently reasonable. And go to patreon.com/unspoiled to sign up. I'm really hoping, I want to mention this again, just in case anybody didn't think I was serious, or B, suddenly made a whole new friend that is super helpful to me that they didn't have the first time they were listening. But I would love for RoShawn and me to be able to host a show, a live podcast at LeakyCon. I tried to get in touch with them and didn't hear back. And I'm going to reach out again and try and, basically mass mail to a bunch of people just in the hopes that somebody bites. But if anybody knows anyone has an in of any kind, I had a few people that I thought might, but they do not, as it turns out, know anybody, because it's a particular kind of con run through a different group of people than some of the others that money's been involved with and stuff. So I need connections. I need to network. So yeah, if you guys listening know anybody, have any recommendations, maybe if you've done something there before, or you know someone else who does, or who has, let me know, because I would really like to do that. And if it comes down to it, I'm okay with maybe just doing something that's off site and that isn't actually directly linked with LeakyCon, just being nearby. So that if you are at the con, then you can just go somewhere near. But it would be really great if I didn't have to set it up on my own, because then I have to do all the figuring out of equipment and everything. Whereas if it's at the con, they will do that and I don't have to worry. And also, being as though it would be at a con, and probably be much more professional setup for all of the sound system and everything. So yeah, guys, I'm just sending out an SOS. Now that song is going to be in my head all night. Why did I do that to myself? And I wanted to say thank you to a couple people. First, I want to say thank you to Ashley Peterson, who sent both me and RoShawn adorable little yarn Dobby, Hedwigs, and Snitches. You got the same ones that I did, right?
Yeah.
Because she sent them to my P.O. box, so I didn't get them for a week or so after you did, so I couldn't remember. But they're really cute, and they have little hangers on them, so that they're almost like Christmas ornaments. And I have them hanging in my office with my Harry Potter / Christmas display, so that is adorable. I also want to thank Jill Goff, who I meant to thank last episode. But Jill got me the Hogwarts leggings from Torrid that I had been wanting. And they were like my uniform when I was at the parks. Like, I wore them like 3 out of the 5 days that we were there. And I wore them on the plane there. And I wore them on the plane home. They are the most comfortable. They're super cute. I get compliments on them all the time. And it was just awesome to have those. So thank you very much, Jill, for that. I want to thank Tessa French, who sent a donation. She called it a Christmas bonus, which, let me tell you guys, Christmas can be hard, as I'm sure everybody knows. And this year, with the trip and Owen's birthday being right before Christmas, it has been not super pretty in my bank account. So, she sent a donation that kind of saved my ass that day. And then today I got a donation from Gia Nee. And thank you so much, Gia. I really, really appreciate it. Gia was messaging me on Facebook asking if we could mention something the next time we record Sherlock. And I was like, oh, Gia, I'm sorry, but it's going to be a long time. So... yeah, I just thank you guys all so much for doing all of that, for sending us this stuff. I know that there's something else that I'm forgetting. Oh, I got a Christmas card from Melanie Linares. Oh, and I know what the other one was. I read the letter to RoShawn off the air. Jess Burgess sent us a really cute card with a letter written for me and a letter written for RoShawn folded up inside. And I wasn't sure, Jess, if you wanted me to read it on the air, but I erred on the side of not doing that because I wasn't positive, and it is somewhat personal in parts. So I just wanted to let you know that I got it, and it was really sweet. And I read RoShawn her letter, as you said to do, and we both really, really appreciate it. And I know that there's... oh, and Krista sent me Christmas presents that are wrapped up under my tree, and I have not opened them yet because I'm a good girl. I think that's everybody. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, and I feel terrible about it.
Well, I have to go to the bathroom, so.
All right. Well, I will wait to read the reviews until next time, but I will just say hi to new patrons real quick. Bear with me, RoShawn. It'll be okay. So, new patrons for this week are Max Bajcek, Michaela Jones, Daisy Dunlap, Alan Kingsley. What's up, Alan? Linnea Johnson, Kayla, Emily Kemp, Sal Karuba, Elvira Dobis, Liz Staten, Alana P., Carola Paredes, Jennifer McDonald, Jackson Bocas, Stacy D., Maria Bruce, and Wallace Baker. All became patrons this week. Thank you all so much. And I just, you guys are awesome. And I love you. And you're the best. So I think that's all. Are we good?
Yes, we're good.
She's fucking got her eyeballs floating over there.
I really do.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. And we will see you next week with the final 3 chapters of Prisoner of Azkaban. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.